And there's a lot of controversy around cheap Chinese camping gear, and in particular tents. So I just want to clear up some of the misconceptions and myths around Chinese made equipment, with probably quite a few surprises for you along the way that might make you think twice about buying certain brands. Now, Chinese gear, especially in this market, gets slated for being cheap, poorly made and a bad purchase, but there's more than one type of cheap Chinese production factory that you may or may not be aware of, and I'm going to show you these locally made brands and where they are really made in this video. Now, in case you don't know, these are some of the brands you probably know of that are not made where you might think they're made. MSR, made in China. Tarp Tent, made in China. Black Diamond, Vietnam. Big Agnes, made in China. Mountain Hardware, China, Vietnam and India and Indonesia. Nemo, overseas. Now Nemo obviously seemed a bit too embarrassed to say where their tents are made, so rather than say in the States or in China or wherever, they just put overseas. Marmot, Vietnam, China and Thailand. Sea to Summit, Vietnam, China and Taiwan. Mountainsmith, China and Vietnam. Robins, who are now linked in with Outwell and part of the OASE group, is made in the Far East. Now a brand we all know and love in the UK is Terra Nova, proud to be British, made in Derbyshire, and they put a huge statement on their website saying made in Derbyshire, designed, built and made in Derbyshire. They are. However, their wild country versions, the more budget versions of the Terra Nova tents, they are not. Now, they don't say where they're made. They make a point of saying they're designed in England and designed in Derbyshire. But wild country tents are actually made in China. Now, this brings me on to a bit of a sad bit. Dan Durston. So some Durston tents are made in Vietnam, in the same factory where they make the MSR, Nemo and the Black Diamond. The Durston X Mid Pro is made in China, in the same factory as Big Agnes and Tarp Tent. Now, Dan Durston is a very small cottage industry. He makes them himself, in theory. You know, he doesn't have retailers around the world that sell these for him. So he sort of cuts out one or two of those middlemen. So when you buy from Dan Durston, wherever it's made, the stringent quality is the same, but it means that he's cut out middleman by direct supplying to you, the retail, the public retail who are buying it. So they aren't as expensive as they could be, or as they would be if they were sold through a major branded market. Now, many people already know that Chinese factories make tents for high-end manufacturers and then simply use that design to copy, improve and adapt into making their own tents. But by cutting out the multiple middlemen, they can sell them considerably cheaper. And here's what happens. Now, the information I'm about to give you is from an industry insider who I'm not going to name because he is still in the industry. But he is someone who has visited these factories whilst working for a very, very well-known tent brand. Now, when you buy a cheap Chinese tent on AliExpress, for example, the Chinese factories will make the tent for around £50 and sell it on AliExpress for £100, and that covers the cost of the AliExpress charges and their markup. Now, that same company will make the same tent, or one similar using the same materials and built in the same factory by the same people, but it's then branded and sold in high volume to the, as far as you're aware, manufacturer of the tent that you buy in your local camping shop or UK online store. Now, these following figures are legitimate markups that these branded tents go through from build to retail because of the amount of middlemen that are involved. The Chinese factory where it's cost 50 quid to make, sell it to the brand manufacturer for £75, who in turn sell it to a UK retailer or online shop for around £110 to £120, and they then sell it onto the public for around £200 to £230. Now, this is an example of a £230 tent sold in the UK and branded by a popular name that we may all know and love. We then look at this as a normal and affordable price for a branded tent, and then look down our noses at tents on AliExpress for £100, assuming them to be of a considerably lower quality. Now, don't get me wrong, there are the factories that simply mass produce incredibly cheap tat for the consumer market, but there are also the extremely high-end factories that are responsible for every TV you've ever watched or the majority of components in every high-end car you've ever driven. Just because it's made in China, don't assume that it is cheap rubbish. Now, I'm not slating higher-end tent manufacturers. Every company in the world starts out as a cottage industry, whether that is Apple or Mercedes. And as they grow and production starts to increase, things change and changes are made, and competition, volume, or just plain greed forces them to outsource builds to other parts of the world so that they are more competitive or make more profit. China, and Asia in general, is the main producer for the majority of these outsourced products, which results in lower costs. Simple as that. Now, a lot of people comment on my videos where I show Chinese made gear and say that everything made in China is rubbish, as they are typing away on their Chinese made mobile phones. I mean, even the great American iPhone is made in China. So does that mean you're going to be getting poor quality? No. These companies use those higher end manufacturers with stringent quality control tests that use better quality materials to ensure that you get a decent product. So I'm not saying that buying a branded tent that is made in China is a bad thing, just simply trying to explain that not all Chinese made gear is bad. Now here's a company I bet you have never heard of. One of the largest and most renowned tent manufacturers in the world is called Jasper Outdoors. Ever heard of them? I bet you haven't. To me it sounds more like a YouTube channel. Now this man, his name is actually Man Yi to be precise, he makes gear and works with the following outdoor companies. I hope you're sitting down. Now, not all these are based on tents, they're also based on other products. They make like clothing, but they still charge a huge amount for it because of their branding. Yet they are made in Asia for a fraction of the cost to us to buy in public. So when you wonder why a £100 tent on AliExpress is considerably cheaper than a £230 one that's branded online, yet the spec seems exactly the same, it's not because it's crap, it's because that is how much it costs them to make it and make some profit, without half a dozen middlemen in between putting on the retail markup for you guys. So this video is just a little nod to the Chinese gear that you can get on AliExpress, and just to say, don't rule them out. Because they are Chinese, without Chinese made equipment, we'd probably still be living in the Stone Age.